Alright, welcome back IB Economics students to this video lecture. In today's video, we're going to be looking at perfect competition, which is going to be our first market structure that we examine. So in this video, we're going to be going over the properties of a perfectly competitive market. We're not going to be going into how it is graphed. That is in our next video. However, in this video, we're just going to be going into the properties of a perfectly competitive market structure. So perfectly competitive market structure is actually highly theoretical. It's actually rather impossible. It cannot exist because of some of the factors that dictate what a perfectly competitive market looks like. So the first so within a perfectly competitive market, the factor is that competition is infinite. Okay, there's infinite competition. So what gives way to infinite competition? Now the first thing it is small firms. Okay. Now, under small firms, what we have is that firms cannot influence or set the prices for the goods. Okay. Now, when firms cannot influence or set the prices for the good, they have to follow the free market equilibrium prices and quantities. Okay. Now, we've talked about free market equilibrium prices and quantities in previous videos. If you guys do not know that, you have to be able to make sure to know how to draw and be able to graph what that looks like. Okay. The second thing there are no barriers. There are no barriers to entry or exit. Okay. So what are barriers to entry and exit? Barriers of entry and exit refers to barriers that prevent firms from entering and exiting the market. And since this market structure is perfectly competitive, firms are encouraged to come in and leave without any barriers of entry to exit. This is a major point that causes this market structure to be highly theoretical instead of being actually practical. The third major factor for this is that there are infinite buyers and infinite sellers. Okay, this is the factor that causes perfectly competitive market structures to exist, because there are infinite buyers as well as infinite sellers. And seeing as how they're infinite, both parties are infinite, the market structure is therefore perfectly competitive. All right. Okay. So that makes sense. That's the third criteria. Our fourth criteria is that these are homogeneous goods. Homogeneous goods basically means that these goods are exactly the same. These goods are identical, regardless of if we go to A provider or if we go to B provider or if we go to number N provider. Each firm produces the same exact good. Therefore, the competitive market structure is perfectly competitive with the same exact good. Okay. And the last factor is that there is perfect information. Perfect information refers to each seller knows how many buyers there are. Each buyer knows which seller, which firm has the lowest prices and perhaps the best goods. Okay, so these are the factors that contribute to a perfectly competitive market structure. And of course, perfectly competitive market structures are highly theoretical. They're completely theoretical, and they do not want and they do not really exist in real life. However, there are some industries that comes really close to a perfectly competitive market structure. For example, the dairy industry comes really close to the perfectly competitive market structure, or for example, the corn producing industry. Okay, so agriculture industry, i.e. agriculture industry. Okay, so these all come close to a perfectly competitive market structure. Seeing as within the dairy industry, firms are usually small. Okay, that means firms cannot set the prices for a good within the dairy industry. Within the dairy industry, however, there are high barriers to entry and exit. So this is not therefore not perfectly competitive competitive market structure. Within the dairy industry, however, there are a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers. It's not infinite buyers, it's not infinite sellers. However, there are a lot. Okay, and then these are also homogeneous goods, regardless if you are producing milk from this producer or producing milk from your mom's producer, or producing milk from India to America to Asia to Africa, wherever you are, to Australia. Your milk is basically going to be the same. Therefore, homogeneous good is occurring. And perfect information, of course, does not exist in the dairy industry. So as you can see from the agricultural industry, a perfectly competitive market structure is indeed seen to a certain extent or to a greater extent when compared to other market structures. So I hope this video is helpful in clearing some conceptions and misconceptions concerning the perfectly a competitive market structure. And I hope you guys to see. So I hope to see you guys in the next video where we'll be going over the graphing, or what this looks like. What does a perfectly competitive market look like when it is graphed? So I hope this video is helpful, and I hope to see you guys in the next video where we'll be graphing our market structures. Goodbye.